Good morning, good day. Tomorrow is Valentine's Day. It's a day set aside to celebrate love. And we all have our love stories. Some are of lost love or unrequited love, first love, or hopefully lasting love. I have that one. BB and I will be celebrating 56 years of marriage and love this year. But there is another love that we need to celebrate, and that's God's love. There's a story in the Old Testament that greatly illustrates God's love. It's found in the book of Hosea. Let me read just 3 verses from chapter 3. Hosea chapter 3, verses 1 through 3. And then said the Lord unto me, Go yet, love a woman beloved of her friend, yet an adulteress, according to the love of the Lord toward the children of Israel, who look to other gods and love flagons of wine. And so I bought her to me for 15 pieces of silver, and for an homer of barley, and for a half homer of barley. And I said unto her, Thou shalt abide with me for many days, and thou shalt not play the harlot, and thou shalt not be for another man, and so will I also be for thee. Now, let me give you the story briefly. Most of you know it, but let me just give it to you briefly. God had told Hosea to marry a prostitute. And later, she left him and presumably had gone back to being a prostitute and had fallen so low as to become a slave. Hosea, in these verses, bought her back, and they resumed their relationship as man and wife. The story of Hosea is a portrayal of God's love for Israel as shown in the life and experiences of the prophet. The story becomes a portrayal of God's love for you and I and all of humanity. Now, his love is portrayed in 3 ways. First of all, his love is unmerited, as it was with Hosea and Gomer, his wife. God's love for us is unmerited. It's given to us in spite of sin. Now, all have sinned. We've heard the verse many times. All have sinned, come short of the glory of God. And that includes me, and that includes you. All have sinned. God's love is given in spite of that. It's given in spite of idolatry. You say, well, I'm not an idolater. Well, be careful when you say that, because anything in front of God becomes an idol. Maybe it's money, maybe it's sports or physical pleasure, hunting or fishing or even sleep. We all have something that at one time or another we've put in front of God, and that becomes our idol. And God loves us in spite of our idolatry, and he loves us in spite of our rebellion, our love of sin, our constant turning away. And we have all of us have at one time or another rebelled against God in some way. Brethren, God didn't have to love. He shouldn't have, but he did, and he does, just like Hosea did. But God's love goes beyond being unmerited. It's also sacrificial. It's sacrificial in that it cost something valuable for Hosea in the Old Testament, but it cost everything for God. It cost his son. The price was necessary because sin has a death grip on humanity, and no one, not me and not you, can stand and say, I have no sin. And so the sacrifice of God's son was necessary. It was also appropriate to the debt that was owed. You see, our debt was beyond that of a slave, as like Gomer. It was the price was the life of the King, the Son of God. No other payment would have sufficed. It cost God enormously to love me and to love you. Are you saved? Well, Jesus paid the price. Now, there's something else we need to understand, that once we're bought, his love is demanding. I want to read verse 3 again. Hosea is speaking. He says, And I said unto her, Thou shalt abide with me for many days. Thou shalt not play the harlot, and thou shalt not be for another man. So will I also be for thee. And this tells me that God's love to us is demanding. Once we're bought, God expects first of all, a continuance. God doesn't save for a little short experience. His salvation is not just for revivals or for the good times or the up there somewhere. He expects a continuance day by day in our relationship with him. He also expects and demands purity in every respect. Impurity exacts a price. Brethren, we are the bride of Christ, and he expects us to act like it. And furthermore, he demands responsibility. God actually wants and expects you and I to interact with him and take a responsible role of that relationship that we have with him. And that manifests itself in worship and praise and obedience. Listen carefully. It doesn't matter who you are. Throughout the centuries, from the Garden of Eden to the cross to the present day, God has put out a total effort to have a relationship with mankind, and that means you, and that means me. He's put out that total effort to love you. To the Christian, God is saying, I have loved you in spite of what you are, and I want to have a very special relationship with you. Christian, are you willing to enter into this relationship with all of your heart? And to the unsaved, God is saying, I love you, and I want to redeem you. Will you call upon me to save you? May God bless you and lead you in all things this day.